Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
But you look at his undermining of the U.S.-led liberal global order, his sundering of the Atlantic Alliance, his zero-sum sensibility that might makes right. He is moving the world into dangerous territory, and I think there's a real lack of imagination for the capacity for in the world caused by someone like this. But as we watch these rallies, what are we seeing? We are seeing somebody use lies to incite fervor in a base.
Yeah.
By the way, lies that are easily called out. You look at, like, we got to build a wall. We've got an illegal immigration. No, we don't. Actually, immigration down for 7-8 years. The president saying illegal immigrants cost us a lot of money. No, actually, illegal immigrants don't. There's a study that he demanded to get shows that refugees added $63 billion to our economy over the past decade. They killed the study. But it's immigrants cause crime. All these gang members come over. No, actually, it's 0.07%, something like 350 out of 300,000.
But it's a blizzard of lies, where the rapidity of lying is tough to stop and refute all of them. So we see incitement, the building of a fervor. We see scapegoating of vulnerable minority populations. We see the allegation of conspiracy, hidden nefarious forces conspiring with the scapegoated populations. We see 4, a sense of mass victimization. It's the high-octane fuel of Trumpism. Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, everybody's a victim. Now, they might be a victim flying around on their G650, but a victim they are nonetheless. And then lastly,
wealthy victims.
And last is his assertion that he needs to use extraordinary powers that heretofore were unthinkable.
We don't need judges
to protect the victims from the conspiracy and the minorities.
That he's created. A crisis that doesn't exist, that he created throughout the campaign. And now, I've got to say, you've got to add another one to that. That is just sheer stupidity. He goes to Greenville, South Carolina. He attacks the dumping Mercedes and BMW. This would be the political equivalent of somebody campaigning in Pittsburgh. He goes, you know what team sucks? God, the Steelers. I can't figure out whether I hate the Steelers more or the Penguins more or the Pirates more. Those colors just make me want to throw. That's the equivalent. I mean, it's that clear. BMW, because Carol Campbell had the vision to open up South Carolina to the world, it was a revolution. I saw Greenville.
It's an incredible city.
Renaissance. It's one of the great cities in America. And he went there and attacked Germans. You walk down the main street of Greenville on a Friday or Saturday night, guess what you hear spoken? German.
A lot of international headquartered companies in Greenville. Look, when we look at Trump right now, we look at the Republican Party conservatism. There is only one requirement now to be labeled a conservative in good standing: absolute, total obedience to Trump. It doesn't matter what he says. And so in the 240th year of the independence of the United States, in 3 states by 78,000 votes, the American people, by a fluke, elected an imbecilic, former reality TV show host and con man, whose only affinity for reading anything were the Adolf Hitler speeches he kept on his nightstand. And so, are we on the edge of a tragedy that will unfold from this? But America's decline is now beginning. And we should make no mistake about this. The U.S.-led liberal global order is in peril. It's in threat. Will he take us out of the World Trade Organization? Will he undermine the international system that Franklin Roosevelt conceived, that Harry Truman built, that was sustained through Ronald Reagan and Barack Obama?
It is Thursday, the 28th of June of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special today, folks, is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. That's right, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Oh my, oh my, oh my. One person by the name of Donald J. Trump is taking us down the road of ruin. But you already knew that, because independent media is here really to be the snowplow that could. That was Steve Schmidt explaining basically Trump's blizzard of lies. It's hard to stop Trump's blizzard of lies. But I think in spite of Morning Joe and his entreaties, because we all know Morning Joe and his ilk, we're pretty much part of the problem. So there's going to be independent media that will be the snowplow that could. And we will plow right through this blizzard of lies. And hopefully this fellow will be in jail. Yes, I agree also, and it wasn't mentioned in Schmidt's entreaty there, but any president that is under an active criminal investigation should not be able to make a lifetime appointment to the courts. Not just SCOTUS, but all the courts. And I think that should be right in there. And let's do that. Let's push that also. Mitch McConnell. I make the rules. We don't need those stinking rules. He's an anarchist. Doing the bidding, I think, a foreign power. Have you seen the size of his house? That's his salary doesn't warrant that size of a house, even though I know Elaine Chao's family is the largest or second largest shipping magnate concern in the world. You know, I mean, she brings some money to the table. I know. But think about it. Transportation secretary? Big house? I don't know. Leave her husband alone. He's just doing God's work, and God happens to be somewhere in Eurasia. Not Rasputin either. He hasn't risen from the dead. It's somebody else a little more insidious. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it's Peter the Great either. Okay, what's on the rest of the menu in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Trump's nominee to run the IRS, that's the IRS, failed to disclose his financial partnerships with Trump-branded hotels. Oh, I don't know. How did I forget that? They always forget. And I don't think it's going to matter, because everybody's doing God's work, and God just happens to be in Eurasia. Trump's frivolous attack on Mueller would get him laughed out of court, but they're probably just going to throw Mueller in jail just because, you know, God said so. And Republicans continue to foment conspiracy theories in an attempt to undermine the Russia investigation. Well, of course they are. And we have to, actually, all kidding aside, really avoid falling into the conspiracy theory attitude. I mean, I make jokes about it, but really, we need to triangulate what might be the truth in this. And if it's complex, if certain things have to happen for other certain things to happen, it gets a little too complex. Simple is always closer to the truth. Okay? If you have to make these complex connections to make something work, to fall into place, it might be conspiracy. Oh, and after the break, then we move to the chef's table. Why am I sermonizing today? I feel like I'm at a pulpit. Is it from the religious training I had in seminary school? I don't know. Well, leaked transcripts of the G7 meeting have revealed that Trump threw tantrums, threatened U.S. allies, and trashed NATO as being bad as NAFTA. What? Does this guy have any idea what he's talking about? No. They don't really teach the complex nuance in that civics class that the FSB teaches idiots, dupes, and assets in the Kremlin. And, speaking of which, North Korea is now improving its nuclear site just weeks after agreeing to dismantle it at that summit that Kim Jong-un had with Donald Trump. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. You will notice to the rightish of the page the chat room link, and that is monitored by Kelly Link and Roaring Girl. And she does that quite diligently throughout the day, so check in. If you take a gander to the leftish of the page there from the chat room link, you'll notice then our contribute and donate buttons. And do click those because we are unable to do this without you. Only do it if you're able to, okay? Please. But your generosity helps us pay the bills around here, and that's, well, we do that. We don't whine about paying our bills, okay? Not like a political party of grievance. My God, those people. And you can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that platform. Thank you, Tom. And you can then follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. You can follow West Coast Cookbook on Twitter at Cookbook West. And I got to notice that I won't be able to share my podcasts on Facebook automatically unless I have a fan page, I guess is what they call it. And so I do have a West Coast Cookbook page already made, so I think when they make that transition, it's supposed to go over. I tried to change it over now, but I don't see how I can. But so at least West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy will be represented itself on Facebook. Oh my God, what have I done? And let's see, you could follow also Netroots Radio on Facebook because Facebook does whatever they want to do. And that's the other, I was trying to automatically share with our Netroots Radio team page, fan page there, and I can't figure out how to do that. It wants to go to mine, my personal one. Now they're saying it can't go there. Well, why did you make me put it there to begin with? Zuckerberg. Okay. What else? Well, of course, I mentioned podcasts, and you can get podcasts of the show by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iTunes, and Stitcher. Did I see that? Let's see, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Okay, I'm sorry. Discombobulated today. Anthony Kennedy retiring. I'm still, look, I don't want to go down that conspiracy route because it does get a little complex. But it kind of makes you wonder, you know, Kennedy hired his staff. He hired his clerks just a few weeks ago. And now he's going to retire in July. I think somebody made him an offer he couldn't refuse. And I don't think it was a horse head at the end of his bed. Just saying. And it's a little curious, too, how a pillow was found on Scalia's face out there in the middle of nowhere. Where they couldn't hear his screams. It makes you wonder, huh? I don't know. Maybe Tony didn't take the offer, and that's how it goes. And then the other Tony said, well, I'm taking the offer. Okay, but he is, in Kennedy's defense, all conspiracy considerations aside, Kennedy is not a young man, but neither is the notorious Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The fellow is a bit older than my dad. Just a little, you know how the world is small and you got these degrees of separation that seem to get, closer and closer to your ring. My dad actually attended school with Anthony Kennedy at Stanford. Now, Kennedy was, had a year or so to go. And I should mention this is when my dad was working on his doctorate at Stanford, so he wasn't a young guy, necessarily. He wasn't, undergrad. Regardless. And Kennedy had quite a reputation on campus as being how my father described him. He was known then as Mr. Constitution. And he was already, wholly entwined with the Hoover Foundation there on campus, which tends to be a little conservative. And so it's got to be hard to do the kind of mental exercises and what's required to do the job. So I don't blame Kennedy just wanting to not work as hard at his age. I just thought that maybe he would wait until after the indictments and maybe the guy was in jail. But like I said, sometimes people make their choices. All right, well, we better get on this because this article by Dominique Jackson out of Raw Story is rather interesting. Donald Trump nominated tax lawyer Chuck Rettig to run the IRS. But a report from Politico reveals that Rettig failed to disclose his relationship with Trump-branded hotels. Oops, just slipped my mind. I don't know. These people have really bad memories. I mean, actually, really bad selective memories. Do they think no one's going to find out? I don't understand these people. And they're supposed to be the elite, as Trump says. Trump said that, we're not the elite because he and his ilk, make more money, have bigger houses, bigger boats. They're the elite. And I'm thinking, have you really gone to the houses of your base? Oh my God. If you think Donald Trump's interior design sense is, shall we say, a bit lacking and then compensated for, I don't know. I would think that you wouldn't call that the elite. All right. And I don't know what he's talking about. Boats. Bigger boats. I don't know. I've had bigger boats than any of these people. Not to brag, but, we didn't call them boats. Some people would say, oh, you have a yacht. No, I'm not of that class. It's a pleasure craft. Big difference, especially in licensing. Because it was a pleasure craft. It wasn't a yacht. Come on. Okay, all that aside. Well, what about this guy Rettig running the IRS? Well, he just happens to own property at the Trump International Hotel Waikiki and Tower. But he failed to mention the locations. Oh, yeah, I just own some property, Oh, yeah, it just happens to be at a Trump hotel. Oh, yeah. Committee staff raised this at the nominee's June 21st due diligence meeting, the memo said. The nominee plans to provide more detail on his committee questionnaire to include the full name of the property. They forget about meeting with Russians, forget about owning a bunch of property in a Trump hotel. Jesus. Okay, well, Rettig also failed to disclose interest and expenses he incurred after giving a personal loan to his family. Well, Julia Lawless, a spokeswoman for Chairman Orrin Hatch, defended him. Of course Julia Lawless would. How is it that these spokespeople are... I don't know. It almost makes you wonder if it's an Onion article, but it's not. Ms. Lawless says, Mr. Rettig has moved through the Finance Committee's bipartisan vetting process in good faith. providing accurate information regarding his personal finances and other matters, Lawless said. The properties that he purchased more than 10 years ago were disclosed and vetted in the customary way. Oh, yeah, usually after they get caught. That's the customary way, I know, ma'am. Oh, members will have ample opportunity to ask questions and get further clarity on this fact and any questions they may have during tomorrow's hearing. Now, Redding did not immediately return a request for comment, because the questions will be answered later, after they've been caught. Offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, folks. Is Chris Sosa brings us this out of Alternet. Now, conservatives are trying to make a legal case that doesn't exist. Where have they ever done that before? And I'm looking at you, Benghazi. Phew. Well, a recent Wall Street Journal op-ed makes crystal clear the hypocritical and ridiculous plan by Donald Trump allies to end the investigation of Special Counsel Robert Mueller. The agreement is that his investigation is, quote, the fruit of the poisonous tree. Well, what is that fruit? Well, first of all, Randall Eliason, former assistant U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, explains that this frivolous argument would get Trump laughed out of court. Well, the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine is a rule that excludes evidence resulting from an investigator's unlawful act, such as an unconstitutional search or arrest. The doctrine does not apply to evidence that would have been discovered without that said action. Now, conservatives claim that text messages between an assistant FBI director and his lover prove bias in the investigation from the start. And that's the poison tree. Yeah, not the P-tape. Remember when they were trying to say that the Steele dossier was totally a fabrication and that was the poisonous tree? And every time anybody said, well, did you get this from the Steele dossier? No, the Steele dossier actually corroborated things we already knew. How do you like them apples, huh? So, now Eliason wrote in the Washington Post, the Inspector General found no unlawful investigative acts here. You can't have tainted fruit if there's no poisonous tree in the first place. And the authors of the Journal op-ed are arguing not to keep out particular items of evidence, but to torpedo an entire investigation. Despite nearly 2 years of intervening events and independent actions by other investigators, that's not discarding particular pieces of the fruit, that's uprooting the entire orchard. Well, of course, give these idiots an inch and they're going to want to take, hectares. While conservatives' argument may excite an underinformed echo chamber, you mean the idiots? The useful idiots? The notion that a single agent could bend the entire Justice Department investigative leviathan to his will, particularly in such a significant case, is ludicrous, Eliason summed up. Now, with the midterms rapidly approaching, Trump's allies are running out of viable options to stymie Mueller's investigation and prevent a damning conclusion that could spark a blue wave. Now, wait a second. They're talking about their red tsunami. I think what they mean is a red tide. And I don't mean roll tide. I mean the kind that sucks all the oxygen out and kills everything.
Cody Fenwick from Alternet brings us this last offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Congressional Republicans are obsessed with doing whatever they can to undermine the special counsel's investigation into Donald Trump. And yesterday, they focused in on one of their favorite targets, FBI agent Peter Strzok. In what one Democratic lawmaker described as Orwellian and Kafkaesque, to reporter Katie Bo Williams of The Hill, lawmakers grilled Strzok behind closed doors about his involvement in both the Russia investigation and the probe into Hillary Clinton's email use. Yeah, it's Hillary Clinton's emails. Strzok became the right's favorite boogeyman in the story when private text messages were released. How were they released? Interesting. Revealing that he frequently expressed disdain for Trump prior to the election. Well, I want to see the private emails of the agents in the rogue New York office, because they had a particular disdain that spanned decades against Hillary. So, please save me your, whatever it is that you're clutching, okay? Okay, the recent Inspector General report about the email probe criticized him in particular for one text in which he said, "We'll stop Trump from being elected." Though the report criticized him for bias, it said there was no evidence that his bias had a consequential outcome on either investigation. Nevertheless, Republicans have insisted on dragging his name through the mud and insinuating that he was somehow scheming against Trump, even though the fact of the Russia investigation was not made public until after the election. Strzok repeatedly made the same point. According to CNN, Strzok told Justice Department investigators that despite his private messages, had he actually wanted to prevent Trump from being elected, he would not have maintained confidentiality about the investigation into contacts between the Trump campaign and Russians in the months before the election. Democrats and Republicans gave conflicting reports about whether the Strzok interview yielded any novel information. Asked if they learned anything now, not in the IG report, Elijah Cummings flatly says no. He says that Republicans frequently cut off Strzok when he was giving his responses. However, Mark Meadows, a Republican of North Carolina, tells reporters that they have uncovered new information not contained in the OIG report in the course of the Strzok interview, but he declines to give any details. Of course not, because the interview only ended after 11 hours. They're going to need some more. And, he has some information. He just can't tell you what it is. Information, yeah. All right. We know what that information is. It's coming out of some orifice. It is. Let's get to our break, and we'll come back and go through weather from around the world. And, of course, we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, Ocean's Gone Girl. The new Ocean's 8 isn't so much a reboot of the highly successful franchise. It's more like a continuation of it in female hands, with the protagonist being Danny Ocean's younger sister Debbie. In an opening scene that mimics Clooney's from Ocean's 11, a crocodile-tearful Debbie reveals during a parole hearing that Danny is dead and all she wants is a regular job and a simple life. However, since she's an Ocean, we know that isn't going to happen. Cut to the next few scenes and we watch the newly released Debbie walking off with several $100s worth of beauty items from a department store and conning her way into a luxury hotel room. It turns out that while serving a 5-year sentence, she's come up with a plan to steal a $150 million necklace during New York's annual Met Gala ball. Of course, carrying out such a task requires lots of planning and a professional team, so Debbie sets about recruiting only the best, including characters played by Cate Blanchett, Sarah Paulson, Mindy Kaling, and Helena Bonham Carter. The plan is not as out there as that of Ocean's 11, but it is intriguing, as is the clever revenge subplot targeting the person that landed Debbie in jail. There are also some fun cameos, including Heidi Klum and legendary Vogue editor Anna Wintour. The cast here is A-list to be sure, but not unlike in other celebrity vehicles like this, many are underused, such as Sarah Paulson's thief-turned-soccer mom, and even the usually dynamic Cate Blanchett. However, newcomers to the screen, Rihanna and Asian-American rapper Aquafina, shine, and Anne Hathaway is great as the parody of the spoiled actress who may or may not be in on the heist. Ocean's 8 may not be in a class with the original, but it is some summer fun. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Sarah Whitman. That's a female northern cardinal. And here's a female Venezuelan troupial. Many people assume that male songbirds are the ones doing the crooning. But more than 660 species of songbirds are known in which the females sing as well. And there are still 3,500 species of songbird in which the female singing status is unknown, which implies that there could be plenty more female singers to be found.
We often talk to people, both people who are scientists and ornithologists, but also people who are birders and citizen scientists who say, yeah, you know, I have this story where a female was clearly singing.
Biologist Lauren Benedict of the University of Northern Colorado. These field reports inspired Benedict and Cornell behavioral ecologist Karen Odom to start the Female Birdsong Project with a group of colleagues in 2017. The goal is to get professional researchers and citizen scientists alike to submit recordings and field notes of birdsong from both males and females.
And we're hoping to really give them ways to report that and document it so that we can aggregate that information in useful ways.
On the project's website, femalebirdsong.org, you can hear various birds of both sexes and complex duets sung by pairs of songbirds like these black-bellied wrens. Now, Benedict and Odom are asking scientists to consider the existence of female birdsong in their research, even when it's not their primary focus. For example, from studying avian neurobiology to collecting population data for bird conservation. They wrote up their goals in the journal The Auk Ornithological Advances. Studying female birdsong is no simple task. Here's Karen Odom.
So the biggest thing is to see the bird, which is, number one, not trivial, and number two, in the past, since birdsong has been thought of as a male trait, it might not be that researchers were always verifying the sex of the bird by finding it and looking at it. But so we're asking people to please be aware that females sing and to actually try to get a look at the bird that you're recording.
These researchers hope that more awareness of female song will lead to better informed studies that can tell us when and why female birds are singing, and perhaps reveal aspects of avian life that no one has yet considered. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Sarah Whitman.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Pools, water parks, and other recreational water venues are popular places to relax and stay cool, but they can be sources of serious illness. Since 2000, nearly 500 outbreaks have been reported at recreational water venues in the U.S., resulting in over 27,000 illnesses and 8 deaths. Most were caused by parasites, bacteria, viruses, or certain chemicals in the water. Parents with young children who have diarrhea should not allow their children to swim or play in the water. In addition, bathers should check the inspection scores of pools and water parks and can conduct mini inspections using test strips before getting in the water. A few simple precautions can allow you to share the fun, not the germs. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Today we begin a brief series on Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States. Abraham Lincoln is a symbol of democracy. His stirring story of hard-won achievements occupies a primary place in America's heritage. Lincoln's story began in Kentucky on February 12, 1809. Born in a crude one-room log cabin, Abraham was the second child of Thomas and Nancy Hanks Lincoln. His parents were typical pioneers who had traveled west from Virginia to seek opportunity on the frontier. In the fall of 1816, when Abraham was 7 years old, his family moved north across the Ohio River to acquire 160 acres of land in the wilderness of southern Indiana. Abraham's mother died in 1817, and his father married Sarah Bush Johnston, a widow from Kentucky who nurtured her stepson's ambition. Although his formal education was sporadic and limited, amounting to less than 1 year of school, Abraham acquired an abiding love of reading. Many years later, he wrote, "A capacity and taste for reading gives access to whatever has been discovered by others." Lincoln's lifelong commitment to learning was his key to self-improvement. That's all for today's podcast. 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
I'm Mark Belanger. Grenada is a small island in the Caribbean with about 100,000 people. It has a robust labor movement representing the island's working people. To find out more about Grenada, I talked to Andre Lewis. Mr. Lewis is the President General of the Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union. He is also President of the Grenada Trade Union Council and a member of the country's Senate. I asked him to describe some of the major issues facing his members.
Some of the most important issues facing our members in Grenada today has to do with the issue of unemployment. That's a major concern for us. As we continue to recover, even based on the information from the World Bank and the IMF, one of the major concerns is that these economic benefits are not felt at the level of the ordinary workers, the general public. The issue of job tenure is another very important factor for us. We have a case here where we have seen, especially in the private sector, let me just say, the question of contract work been used as one of the new norm these days. So you can have people doing permanent jobs and are still considered to be on contract, and that their years of service are not counted as being continuous. That has serious implications for the upward mobility of the workers, because the financial institutions and others will not, and I want to repeat, will not go into any long-term arrangement with any worker who does not have any tenure of service. The question of the transportation cost, we will say that about 1/3 of the income of a worker is spent on transport, just transport alone. And that is of significant concern. The aspect also of minimum wage. The last minimum wage was addressed in 2011-2012. And as we will all know, given the cost of living implications and impact on our members, it therefore means that persons are finding it more and more difficult to meet some of their basic needs. Significant importance also has to do with our healthcare system. Our healthcare system leaves a lot to be desired, and it is extremely difficult and challenging for most of our members. And therefore we have made a call on the government to give this number one priority going forward. So these are some of the major issues confronting our members today and the workers in general.
I know that climate change is seriously affecting many small island states. Is that also true for Grenada?
Well, we are extremely concerned about climate change, its impact on, some people may say, the different temperatures, etc. And as such, we are very much interested in supporting and getting involved in any activities that will result in the management of the negative impact on our environment, our climate, and the labor movement is prepared and has given its support to any of these activities that will contribute to more positive impact on the environment. So, as it relates to plastics, for instance, we will support and has been calling for more care to be taken in terms of the amount of plastics that have been brought into our country and to work towards the eventual elimination of things as plastics, etc., from our environment. Also, we are concerned that given the fact that we are very much of a consumer society, quite a number of the products that comes into our country are not at the level of the standard that one will find in what is considered to be the industrialized world. We have been involved in importing into our country a number of second-hand or used vehicles, used products, for instance, tires, etc. And given the size of our island, we are running into a problem with the question of solid waste disposal. So we are very much concerned about matters like this.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 Minutes. A new UN report on global drug use finds an increasing share of the world's population is using and abusing drugs. 1 in 18 people are now considered regular drug users, and 1 in 9 of them suffer from drug use disorders. UN General Assembly President Miroslav Lajčák was straightforward in his assessment of this year's report.
Unfortunately, it does not contain much good news.
The UN found global drug deaths have surged 60% since 2000. In the United States, increases in drug deaths have been driven largely by the powerful opioid fentanyl, while in Africa and Asia, another synthetic opioid, tramadol, is wreaking havoc in countries that already have substandard health systems. Making matters worse, powerful opioids like fentanyl and tramadol are so concentrated, with just trace amounts needed to trigger an overdose, that they pose difficulties for law enforcement efforts to track their production or intercept them before they hit the market. The continued movement of the global drug trade to the dark web and other encrypted channels has also posed problems for regulators. According to data from the EU and Interpol, nearly 2/3 of listings on major dark web marketplaces are for pharmaceuticals, illicit drugs, or chemicals used in drug production. But lest you think more traditional drugs have been beaten back in recent years, think again.
Another change is being seen in the numbers, because when it comes to cocaine and opium, they have never been higher. More people than ever are producing these drugs. More people than ever are supplying them. And more people than ever are using them.
Despite recent shifts within the U.S. and in other countries to decriminalize drugs or wind down the global war on drugs, the UN's Office on Drugs and Crime strongly condemns decriminalization as a policy tool and is led by a Russian diplomat who continues to push countries to bolster counter-narcotics efforts. Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays. Let's begin with weather from around the world, and we begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River. in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 58 degrees. Looks like we're going to be about nearly the same as yesterday, slated for a high of 82 to 84. We will be sunny all day, not a lick of precipitation in the air at this very moment. Winds are out of the southwest at about 1 to 2 miles per hour. Will be increasing in a couple of hours out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, shifting later on this evening out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And tomorrow looks like we'll be getting up to a high of 87 or so. And then over the weekend for Rooster Crow, the Rooster Crow weekend here at Rogue River, have a great parade and all sorts of neat things. It looks like we'll be in the upper 80s, low 90s. So last year it was over 100, well over 100. It was too hot. So hopefully it won't be as hot as last year. It looks like maybe it won't. So we could get lucky. Grass pollen remains high. I have air quality index at 12 parts per million. They consider that good, but it's getting up there now. Oops. And the daytime UV index remains very high at 9. Take care. Use the proper SPF. And just do. Well, high pressure dominates and the barometer is at 30 inches right now. Visibility is up to 10 miles per hour, and humidity is down to 68% and falling. Whoa. Okay, well, I'm going to have to make sure all those plants are watered again. You know, they're like rocks by the end of the day. And normally one wouldn't want to water overnight, but I got to do something with the soil. Could be climate change, or it could just be, I don't know, a figment of our imaginations. That could be it. Let's look at weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted. These purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 79 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 82 degrees and sunny. Rome is 82 and fair. Kiev is 78 and fair. Kabul is 81 and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 81 and fair. Tokyo is 79 degrees and partly cloudy with a weather advisory for thunderstorms in the area. Sydney, Australia is 47 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 54 degrees and sunny. And New York is 75 degrees Fahrenheit and mostly cloudy. Oh, at least you got a little bit of shade. All right. Hopefully it's not too humid. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. First offering here at the chef's table of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, folks. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Speaking of spice, our petulant boy king, and he's kind of an old guy. I don't know why they call him a boy king, because there ain't nothing boyish about him. Not after all these many years. At some point, folks, really, at some point. Well, Brad Reed from Raw Story brings us this offering. A newly leaked transcript shows that Donald Trump went further than anyone had previously known in trashing traditional alliances during the recent G7 meeting in Quebec. According to Axios' Jonathan Swan, Trump ranted about the North Atlantic Treaty Organization during talks with other world leaders at the G7, and even hinted that he could pull out of the alliance altogether because Vlad wants him to, of course. According to Swan, Trump's remarks reinforced some of the Europeans' worst fears that he'll take a purely transactional approach during next month's NATO summit. That means on his own, folks, willy-nilly with no plans about how it's going to work. Just do it. And so he wants to take this supposed transactional approach, according to Swan, during next month's NATO summit, which is scheduled to take place on July 11th in Brussels, just days before Bastille Day. Wait until that happens. Undermining the NATO alliance has been one of the biggest goals of Russian President Vladimir Putin, whom Trump has regularly praised for providing strong leadership. Trump earlier today once again insisted that he believed Russia was being sincere when it said it did not interfere in the 2016 presidential election, despite the fact that even the hyper-partisan report issued by Republicans on the House Intel Committee this year concluded that Russia did, in fact, directly interfere with our elections.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
All right, finishing up here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is an article out of Think Progress by D. Pravaz. According to analysts focusing on North Korean issues on the site 38 North, not only has Pyongyang not started the denuclearization process, but it is making improvements to its program at a rapid pace. Now, that's some good negotiating by the greatest negotiator in the history of the universe. Using satellite imagery, 3 experts have determined that a variety of projects are continuing at the Yongbyon Nuclear Scientific Research Center, where new buildings are going up, uranium enrichment continues, and modifications to key technical equipment are moving at a fast clip. The researchers note that these upgrades don't mean that the North Korean pledge to denuclearize is a no-go, which is true. What these ongoing projects do signify, though, is that unlike what Donald Trump would like us to believe, Pyongyang is a long, long way from actually getting rid of its nuke program. It also shows that North Korea is staying on the path it was traveling prior to the June 12th summit in Singapore, in the absence of economic benefits and security guarantees that go beyond a temporary suspension of U.S. South Korea military exercises. Pyongyang's nuclear weapons program is here to stay. Daryl Kimball, executive director of the Arms Control Association, told Think Progress that it is not surprising that the North Koreans are doing what they're doing because while they committed to stop nuclear and ballistic testing, they did not agree to halt the production of plutonium and highly enriched uranium. Isn't that grand? Now, that's a handshake that, I don't know. They probably should have put the Geiger counter on them. So Kimball continues, and this, in my view, this underscores the urgent need to pursue the difficult and detailed negotiations that are going to be necessary to bring about a verifiable halt to all of North Korea's nuclear activity so that they cannot improve their capacities while talks on denuclearization go on. As we speak here, pleasantly on the phone, the North Koreans, who, yes, have halted nuke testing for now and have halted ballistic testing, are still churning out highly enriched uranium and plutonium that can be used to add to their existing stockpile of nuke weapons, he said. Getting Pyongyang off this path will require difficult, detailed work, something Trump doesn't seem to highlight in his messaging. Now, no sooner had Trump returned from that baffling Singapore summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un than he began counting his chickens. He tweeted, "Before taking office, people were assuming that we were going to war with North Korea. Obama said that North Korea was our biggest and most dangerous problem. No longer. Sleep well tonight." Of course, Neville Chamberlain, when he came out and said, "I've brought you peace in my time," also told the gathering crowd that late night to, go ahead, go home, sleep well. Look how that turned out. He got fired. They put in the guy that said, "Look, we've been under attack all this time." And they did. This, after the tweet, despite the reality that no one was really worried that the U.S. would actually go to war with North Korea during President Barack Obama's presidency. In fact, that became a real danger once Trump came into office and started making threats of fire and fury and total destruction. North Korea, of course, countered in its own colorful fashion. Though there was nothing that detailed, the when and how of denuclearization in the incredibly brief agreement Trump signed with Kim, upon whom the U.S. president heaped praise, much to the horror of American lawmakers and human rights activists, the president was quick to chalk it all up as a done deal. And as CNN reported earlier this week, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has refused to put a timeline on when the negotiations might yield a result beyond the signed joint agreement. Because they have no idea what they're doing. They make it up as they go along, in this reporter's opinion. Verifiable denuclearization at the active sites, of which Kimball said there are at least 2, will require regular confirmation by international inspectors who must also ensure that there are no undisclosed sites. Still, he added, it does establish a minimal foundation for the detailed talks and the work that is necessary to halt and then reverse and then eliminate North Korea's nuclear and missile infrastructure. But the mission is clearly not accomplished. So put that sign up there, not accomplished. And that's the story and the meme of this whole regime, isn't it? Well, they've accomplished too much, and for ill. Let's get that clear. Okay, well, we are at the end of our broadcast period for the day, but Netroots Radio will broadcast on for all the breaking news as it breaks. We'll be back here tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Alrighty, so folks, stay listening to Netroots Radio for the rest of the day, and we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus d'être tendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.